Good morning. Welcome back to Coffee with the Callers. I'm Father James along with
Father Doug.
and we are here to talk about a very timely subject as we approach the Thanksgiving holiday, how to have a functional argument. You know, Padre, that probably at a few Thanksgiving Day tables, there might be some heated discussions that
Been
come
known
about.
to happen.
Yeah,
one or
talking
two
about
dysfunctional arguments.
that
have
is
happened.
correct.
Yes.
That is correct. So we wanted to talk to you about how to have a good argument.
Exactly.
So, Padre, when we bring this up, how to argue, what would be some recommendations that you give someone?
Well, I think the first thing is to maybe try to expand our view of what an argument could be. Sometimes we're scared of arguments because we think, well, an argument is basically a war, and two people are trying to force each other to accept each other's opinions, and so that makes us want to either go scorched earth when we argue, or avoid
That's
the whole
classic.
thing altogether, right?
The classic Thanksgiving Day experience. It was scorched earth.
But there is an idea of an argument in our philosophical tradition that says it could be a team effort. It could be that two people are working together to try to find the truth. And in order to do that, they're saying, well, this is what I think, and these are the reasons why I think it. What do you think about my reasons?
Sure.
And what do you think? And what are your reasons? And back and forth like this, and step by step, and maybe modifying each other and correcting each other along the way, together, we might be able to get at the truth better than just one person trying to think things out alone.
Sure. So like having a discussion rather than a fight. G.K. Chesterton, I did some quote searching on my iPhone this morning, and Chesterton says this: people generally quarrel because they cannot argue.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's true. So often when we're talking to each other and we're trying to prove a point, we feel that if we don't absolutely refute the other person, then somehow that other person is going to think that we agree with them. It doesn't have to be that way. You can still leave an argument and say, okay, I see your point. I still remain firm to my point, and let's move on. It doesn't have to be that there's a victor and there's a loser every single time.
So, I think one thing to keep in mind practically, if you're trying to have an argument, the first thing we were kind of saying is you want to look at it not as a war, right?
Yeah.
The next thing is that an argument has to be an exchange of reasons. It can't just be an exchange of opinions or views, like, I think this, well, I think the opposite. Well, let's see who can say it louder. Then you get bickering. So the key question always, if I think this, is why?
Sure.
Why? And when two people can start to trade reasons back and forth and have a common sense of okay, I'm going to consider the reason that you gave me, and I'm either going to accept it or I'm going to give a reason why I don't accept it, and back and forth like that, then you start to open up a path forward towards some kind of agreement.
Another thing that's interesting, as Catholics, we find ourselves oftentimes in arguments with people. Someone may say, oh, do you worship the saints? Or do you worship Mary, really?
Yeah.
And so what I have found to be helpful, particularly in religious arguments, is not saying, this is what the church teaches. This is what the church teaches you, and you have to believe this. I always try to go kind of a little bit of a different route, a little more nuanced, and say, this is what the church holds to be true. And when you say it that way, then it's not necessarily telling that person, you have to believe this. It's saying, look, this is what we hold to be true. This is the reason for our faith. And it sort of gives them the option to sort of consider it and to mull it over. And like you say, try to approach it with right reason rather than they're telling me what I'm supposed to be believing.
I think that can be a helpful approach to try to say, this is what I hold. Because for whatever reason, people think, when I say I'm arguing for this, or this is what the church teaches, sometimes people think argument or teaching are attempts at force.
Yeah.
I don't know why they think that, but people can think that and then get defensive, like, well, you can't force me to believe that. But if we understand what an argument is, trying to persuade somebody of something is not the same as trying to force somebody to do something.
Sure.
When you're having a conversation with your friend and you say, well, I think we should go to dinner at this restaurant for these reasons. That's not an attempt to force your friend to go to the restaurant. It's an attempt to persuade him,
Like
right?
you might say, I hold to be true that Michi Ramen is a much better ramen place than Tatsuya.
Yes.
So I hold it to be true that Michi Ramen is far superior. And then the other person would say, okay, or, well, I don't hold that to be true. Or you might say at the dinner table at Thanksgiving, well, I hold to be true that the Longhorns are a much better football team than the Aggies this year. I just hold that to be true.
And then you have to say why.
That's correct. So have a great Thanksgiving, and when you argue with each other, let's make it a quality conversation as opposed to bickering. Padre, send them off.
Well, thanks for tuning in this week, and have a happy Thanksgiving.